EA Sports.
This is gonna be very, very interesting.
Fuck, I can't spell. Recently, I found my dad's old PS2, and I've been having a massive trip down memory lane. And because I've already talked my old man's ear off, I've got nowhere to turn to. But here, if you have eyes, you'll know that today's video is about
SSX Tricky. I hope you're ready.
a relic of EA Sports Big's golden age.
Before the dark times, before the Empire.
It's an extreme snowboarding game that's filled to the brim with charm, excellent gameplay, and a sweet soundtrack. And I'm here today to tell you why 21 years later, no other snowboarding game has reached this level of quality. Now let's get ready to rock a rhyme that's right on time, because it's tricky. The SSX series began back in the year 2000. The original SSX game was a launch title for the PlayStation 2. This was back in the time where launch titles were a major factor in whether or not a console would sell. So SSX had to be up to scratch, as it was up against games like Madden 01, Unreal Tournament, and Time Splitters, all of which are still highly regarded games for their time. SSX was praised for its innovative and addictive core gameplay loop. However, the game would suffer overall as it lent for a more realistic approach in terms of its art style and presentation, as it was targeted to a more niche audience. Doing so meant that the game would have to rely on its gameplay and graphics to draw on onlookers. That being said, the game definitely drew enough attention as EA gave the green light to produce the sequel a month after the original's release. But this video isn't about the original SSX. Instead, I want to talk to you about its cooler older brother, SSX Tricky. Tricky was released on November 5th the following year, and it was an instant hit. It was clear that the developers had listened to the criticism of the first game and gave it the fresh coat of paint that it so desperately needed. Reviewers at the time of Tricky's release were slow to call the game a true sequel, as it had many reused elements from the previous entry, but after enough time with the game it was clear that Tricky was a whole different thing.
How you doing out there? This is Roselle. Welcome to Garibaldi.
SSX Tricky would take the smash hit formula from the first game and give it a new lease on life, widening the targeted audience and adding a few tweaks and new gameplay elements to create what is still praised as the best snowboarding game of all time. To help Tricky with its rebranding from a realistic snowboarding experience into an extreme arcade game, the developers started by licensing It's Tricky by Run DMC and using it as the main theme of the game, hence the name Tricky, although the song would have more utilization later in the game. Tricky would come with a wave of new additions as well as revamping many of the original game's elements. All of the courses from the original were revamped and given new textures and lighting. Tricky added 2 new racetracks, multiple new characters, each with their own dialogue and backstories, a rivalry system, and an uber tricky system. Oh, and they also brought back the motherfucking Beastie Boys DJ, Mixmaster Mike, to mix the game's soundtrack. Like, this game just bleeds pure, unadulterated style, and I'm here for it. SSX had 2 different types of game modes, Show Off and Race, both of which could be played by yourself or with a friend. Show Off was about doing as many tricks as possible to score points that would earn you medals, and Race was what it said on the tin, a race. Complete the racetrack 3 times to progress to the next event. Show Off is by far the more popular of the 2, encouraging players to set new high scores and post them to forums and blogs for bragging rights. Tricky would add another mode, Time Challenge, although Show Off would still be the superior game mode. The gameplay of SSX was fairly robust and had very few flaws. That being said, Tricky would once again step it up with new animations and tighter controls that led to more responsiveness. The gameplay of Tricky is easy to learn but hard to master. To perform a trick, you must hold down any of the 4 shoulder buttons on the controller in any combination. Afterwards, you must hold the X button to prepare to jump, and then release to perform your trick. Once you learn the timing for your tricks, you could press the square button, or its counterpart, to tweak the trick. Tweaking a trick basically made it so that you would earn more points for holding the trick for longer. And finally, you could add in some spins into your tricks. By holding the jump button, you could preload the tricks without the character trying to perform them on the ground and failing miserably. You would also preload spins the same way, adding another level of complexity to the tricks. Tricky has a practice mode where you may perform these tricks from your character-specific trick book, though the first 2 chapters were all identical. Practice mode has a controller displayed in the corner to indicate when you should be pressing and releasing the buttons to nail the time. If you failed the trick, the game gives you feedback and tells you what you did wrong in order to correct your mistake. Tricky is at its best when you utilize all of its gameplay elements and pull off the gnarliest tricks. Another thing that Tricky would improve upon was SSX Adrenaline Turbo feature that allowed you to store points earned from performing tricks into a speed boost. The boost would help you make higher jumps and pull off tighter turns. However, the catch was that the meter had a slow decay, and if you bumped into something, crashed, or wiped out, you would lose points. SSX Tricky took this idea and made it way cooler. The Adrenaline Turbo was replaced with the Tricky meter, almost identical in gameplay, apart from when you maxed out the Tricky meter, you could perform one of 5 of your character's Uber tricks. Tricky by Run DMC would also play once you maxed out the meter, and it would change its BPM to match the song currently playing. You would only have 20 seconds to perform an Uber trick before you needed to build up enough points again. Each character had their own unique Uber tricks, but would also share a few more generic tricks to reduce memory usage. You gotta remember, this was the early thousands, where the standard memory card for a PS2 was 8 meg, which is exactly how much storage I had to use to store this photo of whatever the fuck it is. Once 5 Uber tricks had been landed, you had infinite boost and unlimited Uber tricks even if you crashed. These physics-defying Uber tricks were also different depending on what type of board you were riding on. There are 3 types of boards in SSX Tricky. The freestyle board, which is nimble and allows for more flexibility and helps you perform tricks quicker and with more control. The Alpine board, which is built purely for speed, and the BX board, which is a happy medium between the 2. These boards, as previously mentioned, made the characters do different Uber tricks, which made each character worth playing multiple times over. The boards handle very differently from one another, and you can very easily tell after shredding for a few hours with the same board than switching it up. For example, the Alpine board is only curved at one end, so if you ended up facing the opposite way when you landed, and you had your tail out first, you were going nowhere fast and had to switch again so that the board was facing the right way. It being a bigger board also meant that you couldn't flip around like Yoda on crack and had to be more precise with your tricks. SSX Tricky learned from its predecessor that most snowboarders look pretty similar once they're all in their gear. The characters had some dialogue, but it was pretty generic trash talking or showboating. Tricky's design philosophy was to add style and personality to the SSX formula, and so the team went to work hiring voice actors and character artists to create these brand new characters. Almost all of the original characters that returned for Tricky had redesigned styles and outfits to better differentiate them from one another. There are a total of 12 characters in SSX Tricky, with 5 returning from the previous entry. However, some of the characters are region locked, meaning the American version of the game had an American character named Mac, but in the PAL version of the game, he was replaced with the German Marty. The backstory was largely unchanged except for a few obvious spellings, but apart from that they were mostly identical. All the characters are well voice acted. Each of the characters received a decent backstory that gave you a good sense of who they were as a person. They were also given an interview in which a reporter asked them all roughly the same questions, and the characters really show off their distinct and varied personalities. For example, JP is a French prick who is a seasoned boarder and a real showboat, whose friends really only like him because he has a lot of money. His parents treated him like a side project, and so he craves all the attention he can get, but is a huge soft cock and has ego shattered with the smallest of insults. Eddie is the new kid on the block and is a huge party animal with a massive totally bro attitude. He's a self-proclaimed programmer / hacker, lives life like he's James Hetfield in the 80s despite being only 19. If neither of those float your boat, perhaps Luther's more your style. Luther is who you get when you look up the definition for redneck American. He's fat, slimy, loud, and obnoxious. Maybe one day you took the BDSM test just out of curiosity and it turned out that you were the submissive type. Well, Zoe's who you need. She's a punk rock type of girl who has a thing for shoving people off their boards. She abhors weakness in any state and can be found mixing shit up in the clubs. Definitely the dominant one. Or maybe Marisol stuck out to you for some unbeknownst reason. Even the game knows it. I'm not kidding. Her backstory literally describes her with one word: sacrilegious. And given the fact that she's 18 and loves to party all night, I'm fairly certain it means exactly what you think it means. Is Marisol too much for you? Kaori is a 17-year-old Japanese schoolgirl. In her spare time, she seeks out her spiritual needs from Brody and all of her other needs from Marty. If you enjoyed Beta Squad and think British accents are funny, then Moby's your man, spouting all sorts of British shit that isn't close to any form of human language, although some of his boards are kind of wicked, and he has some of the best trash talking lines in the game. Stepping back into the realm of the cheeseburger and the daily school shooting, we have Sia, who is voiced by the R&B legend Macy Gray. Sia is all about music, culture, and style. Nothing is more important. Heading north a little, we have the mascot of SSX Tricky, Elise. Most definitely a closeted lesbian with a quick jab and quicker time on the tracks. But like, I mean, come on, her favourite movie is Charlie's Angels from 2000. Like, read the signs, people. Then we have the environmentalist with the perfect abs, Brody. The best description I can give of this guy is that he's Chris Hemsworth from the 2016 Ghostbusters movie. Dumb, strong, and blonde. Oh, and most definitely high as a kite. And then there's Simon. Whose whole personality is insane and is a tattoo that he talks to. Much like my dad, who only talks to me in my dreams. This allowed for the introduction of the rivalry system. Each character has a designated friend and enemy. The idea being that if you knock down another rider in race mode, you would become enemies with them and they would try to shove you off your board if you got too close to them. Or alternatively, if you knock down your friend's rival, they would be kind to you and protect you. Although in practice, this really didn't do a whole lot. It basically just meant that they won't push you over. But you know, the thought's still there. The PAL version of this game has cutscenes before and after races between different riders, pretty much just shit talking each other, or talking about how their Sunday was if you're friends with them. The rivalry system would also affect who was in the cutscenes, and their friendship level would also dictate the dialogue between them. It makes it so much more fun to rub their face in the snow after you've just been mouthed off by a stupid frog-faced Frenchy fuck. I've got to admit though, the dialogue is pretty janky, because the other character will comment on your behaviour, and you'll just say some sort of catchphrase, and they stare at you awkwardly. You also get to shit can other characters while racing, which is loads of fun, but again can be a little rough around the edges in terms of their dialogue. Regardless, it's actually really entertaining and makes you engage with the characters more, as there's plenty of different cutscenes to see because of all the characters and the rivalry stuff. SSX Tricky came with 2 brand new courses and revamped the other 8 from the original. Garibaldi and Alaska, the easiest and hardest tracks respectively, were added with Tricky. You start with only Garibaldi being playable, but if you play World Circuit mode and level up your riders and get gold medals, you unlock the next course. The courses from the original SSX had a few shortcuts in the level here and there that would help you in race mode, and when in show-off mode, the game would add point multipliers to increase your score and encourage bigger tricks. All the maps in Tricky have loads of personality. Garibaldi is a nice and pleasant ride with a few shortcuts to take you over some nice untracked areas. Snowdream is played at night and is full of shorter routes and loads of grind rails. Mesa Blanca is snowboarding meets the Wild Wild West, although it's my least favourite track in the game despite being a super cool concept. Aloha Ice Jam is a sunny resort and is more of an ice track instead of snow, but it's slowly melting away. Like, fucking, they knew about climate change 20 years ago. What the fuck are we still doing? Mercury City is so dope, and it feels like anywhere you go is a shortcut. Elysium Alps is mostly untracked and has some massive jumps through the woods. Alaska is the biggest and longest map in the game. It gets you right in the action by dropping you in from a platform suspended by a helicopter. There are also 2 bonus tracks in the game. Pipe Dream, which is a freestyler's wet dream, and Untracked. These were unlocked after fully maxing out any character. All of the maps are full of billboards and Easter eggs. Some of the billboards have riders on them promoting vitamins and other supplements and equipment. Although unnecessary gameplay wise, it really helps sell the idea that this world is lived in. Although one look at your audience and you'll see it's just 4 dudes repeating the same 6 animations, but no, still. Tricky's maps for the most part are all fun to race and show off on, with some of my favourites being Garibaldi, Alaska, and Elysium Alps. These tracks I feel like have the highest skill ceiling, starting out fairly easy and ramping up in difficulty the more shortcuts and secret areas you find. And then there's Tokyo Megaplex, which is a course that has laps in it thanks to this giant fuck off fan that blows you 50 odd meters into the air, which is awesome for show off because it feels like you're snowboarding down a massive pinball machine. And if that isn't the coolest shit ever, then I don't know what is. But this son of a bitch gets pretty tedious when you realise you have to complete the course 3 times for race mode before you can progress to the next course, meaning you do a minimum of 9 laps for every character if you want to unlock all their boards. Like, fuck me dad, I just don't have the time. Speaking of which, Tricky has a character leveling system. When playing in World Circuit mode, you can earn medals that equate to points to enhance your character's stats in one of the 4 categories. Edging, which is cornering, go have a shower if you thought otherwise. Stability, that lets you take more of a bump before you wipe out. Speed, come on, I'm not explaining this one. and trick that lets your character pull off tricks faster so that you can hold them for longer or more points. You get 2 character points for the bronze medal, 4 for silver, and 6 for gold, and can be spent however you want. Each character has a preset amount of points to help guide you depending on what type of border they are, but the choice is really up to you. You also earn new ranks as you gain more and more points, and every character has their own little animation that plays whenever they rank up. But it doesn't stop there. Each character also has their own unique trick book, which requires you to perform certain tricks precisely to unlock different outfits for your character. If you complete this trick book, you also unlock the Uber board, which is the best board you can unlock for your character. It's a chromed out board for whatever type of border your character is. Unfortunately though, this does get a bit stale after a while, and it's a shame you can't use other boards' paint jobs on it after you unlock them, because there's plenty of boards all with their own unique and cool designs, and the chrome, while cool, does become quite sad looking, like a rusted up old XR6 on the block, whose owner has no intentions of fixing it up, despite telling you otherwise. SSX Tricky brought back Mixmaster Mike from the original SSX. Mike was the Beastie Boys DJ for the majority of their career. They would also bring back Razel, a beatboxing rapper who would provide commentary while you were racing. Commentary was always so fucking cool. He would tell the audience what trick you just landed, and would insult you if you did the exact same trick twice and tell you to switch it up. The SSX series, don't quote me on this, were also potentially the first games to have layered music that changes depending on your actions in the game. Like, for example, when you go underwater in Banjo-Kazooie, the music feels like the speakers have also been submerged and the theme's different. Well, SSX Tricky does a similar thing with its trick meter. See, the more tricks you do without crashing, the more points you gain. But to bring some more intensity to the game, the tracks start to add more instruments and beats when you hit those bigger tricks. And, as previously mentioned, when you build up enough points for your meter and start doing uber tricks, Tricky starts playing and matches the BPM of the song so it doesn't stick out and instead flows into the music like it was meant to be there. Like, fucking hell, it is so cool! The music also takes a quick backseat whenever you're up in... That was Kiwi as fuck. The music also takes a quick backseat whenever you're up in the air. This puts a major focus on the trick you're doing and gives you enough time to think and plan if you can do another trick or if you need to land so you don't break your ankles. All the tracks have 3 songs that play, with some doubling up due to memory usage. But that doesn't really take away from the experience. Because the music changes depending on how well you're playing, it can make every run you do feel different from the last. It's pretty dope honestly, and it gets you addicted along with the excellent gameplay. Like with all good 2000s games, Tricky had cheat codes. Most of them were just to unlock new maps or max out the characters without putting in the effort, but Tricky also had some fun cheat codes. One of them being the ability to play as the secret 13th character, Mixmaster Mike. It's little things like that that really add to the game's charm and personality. All in all, SSX Tricky is by far the flashiest and most consistently fun snowboarding game that many people still consider to be the best. While being dated in its graphics, sure, the art style helps it keep the game looking fresh. And I forgot to mention, it even came with a whole other section of DVD content with loads of behind the scenes stuff, featuring a wide array of short films about the design philosophy, the character design, the tricks, the tracks, and loads more. It also even came with a jukebox so you could play the individual songs that you hear in the game. The extra DVD content just brings a certain level of early 2000s nostalgia. Like remember when movies would come with games and bonus content similar to that? Anyway, I'm getting off track. The DVD content was a very warm welcome, and while not the main draw, it's certainly a very nice addition to an already complete package. While not around today, EA Sports Big created so many amazing titles that are super nostalgic to so many people. Unfortunately, it's been left to rot as the corporate greed takes over EA more and more, but they still made some pretty fucking sweet games in their time. And SSX Tricky is the meanest and coolest by far. Recently, there have been calls from the SSX community and fans who remember the game for a remaster or a remake of Tricky for the PS5. And while this would be an instant success, EA is too busy milking every last coin they can from Star Wars, FIFA, and Madden before the well all dries up and left with nothing but their fingers up their asses. Well, that'll probably about do it for this one. Next time I feel motivated, I might do another video. Already got some plans in the works, so fingers crossed the wait isn't as long as last time, because holy shit, it's been like 3 months since I uploaded. Alrighty, bye.